LD is go for prop load.
Launch auto started. Launch auto started.
Hey, I want to show you something that's really stupid on my phone. It reminds me of 10 years ago when I got into this whole online thing. You know, people used to tell me,
about 36 hours, but tomorrow night, and that mission will be on a brand new Falcon 9 booster. However, so the reason that is because the United States Space Force, which is the operator of the GPS constellation, has been basically the last major SpaceX customer that was requiring brand new boosters on all of its missions. I use the past tense there because just recently, the Space Force has modified their launch contracts with SpaceX to allow SpaceX to use reused boosters. which means that the next two, I believe there's only two more GPS satellites that are ordered to launch on SpaceX as of right now. I believe, yeah, I think there are more coming, but I think two have been awarded past the one launching tomorrow to SpaceX, and both. Right, exactly. So that those two missions will now be able to fly on reused boosters from SpaceX, which means that the final launch customer who was still holding on to every booster that we use needs to be new, has said we are okay with launching our high valuable missions on reused rockets, and SpaceX has taken them on that because that will lower the launch costs and all of that. So yeah, so this will be the last U.S. Space Force mission required to use new boosters, hopefully. There are several other U.S. Space Force missions on SpaceX's manifest where the contract has not been modified yet. We talked about a Falcon Heavy mission coming up that we know will need at least a new center core because SpaceX doesn't have any center cores sitting around. They do have side boosters, so in theory they could change that.
Close to your phone, but still maintaining distance. 30 minutes away from the launch of Starlink, weather remains 40% favorable for liftoff.
So that is
60% unfavorable, which is I believe a flip.
Yeah, so it used to be going into the day we had a 60% chance of favorable weather that has now been degraded down to 40%. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that. Like we said, they are go for fueling. They are going to proceed into fueling. They will likely do the usually standard procedure is to do another weather check at like T-minus 1 minute just to see if it's good, and then they'll decide whether to launch or not. I know recently we had a very similar situation at SAOCOM 1B where we all said the weather doesn't look good. I think it was winds that we were looking at. And they said, we're going to do a final weather check at T-minus 1 minute. We said, okay, we're all expecting to get to T-minus 1 minute and them call us scrub. And we got to T-minus 1 minute and the launch director called out go for launch and we launched right then and there. So don't leave or anything just because it's a low chance of good weather doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It's happened before. So we're going to stay right here and we're going to hope that this thing can go this morning.
Indeed. And, for the weather constraints, we were talking about it raining here. It has stopped raining at the press site where we are. However, just looking around, there are really dark storm clouds all around the area. And the biggest concerns for today, at least going into today, I haven't seen the updated forecast yet, but going into today, the main concerns were the cumulus cloud roll and the thick cloud roll, which are big fancy ways of saying lightning. It's my, if you're not up at this time, you need to really get up, lazy person alarm for regular beginning of week shenanigans. But anyway, yes, it's a big fancy way of saying lightning and specifically triggered lightning because the atmospheric conditions and the electrical charge in the atmosphere needed to naturally trigger a lightning strike is greatly reduced when a rocket, which is a giant conductor, ascends into the sky. So if you've already got conditions that are perfect for rocket triggered lightning, which is when the rocket goes up, it lowers the overall amount of electrical potential needed in the atmosphere to trigger a lightning strike and can therefore trigger a lightning strike because of the ionizing gas behind the rocket as it ascends. So we really, really want to make sure that rockets are not hit by lightning, not just because we want to protect the rocket. I mean, it is a multi-million-dollar investment, and these things really are investments now, especially the Falcon 9s, which fly more than once. But lightning strikes can also either outright destroy a rocket, they can cripple the flight destruct system, they can cripple guidance systems, and if you cripple a guidance system and a flight destruct system, and you just have a rocket free flying through the atmosphere, that's very bad. That's very bad. So we don't want to do that. And of course, here in the United States, we do have a history of rockets getting struck by lightning, most notably the Apollo 12 mission to the moon and an Atlas mission in 1986. Apollo 12 continued successfully on to its mission. The Atlas was destroyed. So you can see why we get a little concerned for things like that. But as we continue to march down, and again, my apologies, we are suffering a few technical issues here this morning. So we are hoping to take your questions. Unfortunately, we can't see them our side right now. So please do bear with us. Michael is working very hard to fix that behind the scenes.
It's working.
It's working. We can take questions. There we go. Okay, cool.
But Chris, can you check Discord, please? We want to juggle a modem.
Okay, we'll do. Yep.
And while Chris does that, I will give a brief insight into what exactly you're looking at. Chris mentioned that we are at the press site. We are at the Launch Complex 39 press site. If you're familiar where the big old countdown clock at the NASA Kennedy Space Center is, that's where we're standing, right next to the vehicle assembly building. And we are about 3 miles from pad 39A. So that's what the perspective you're getting from our camera here. We will also be bringing in the official camera feeds from SpaceX's webcast to have some additional camera views once this thing lifts off. So keep an eye out for that. We'll be showing you whatever the coolest views that we have, whether it's our cameras or SpaceX's. Yeah, and while we're here, again, we want to take any questions you have. So Chris is working on our modems over here. Michael, do you have some questions I can answer?
Yes, and quickly, Moldy Space Industries, thank you for the super chat, and Lex, thank you as well. Rough Riders asks, which booster do you think will perform the first 7th flight?
That is a very good question, and I wish I had my notes in front of me. I have notes on all the boosters and what missions I think I'll get to next, but I don't have that in front of me. What I can say is that one of the upcoming Starlink missions, which they're basically using to fill the gaps between all of their paying customer missions for NASA, Space Force, all those things. One of those Starlink missions will almost certainly see a 7th flight of a booster relatively soon, maybe in the next couple months. Simply based on the booster that came back. I'm forgetting what the booster number is that recently completed its 6th flight, but that one had a successful launch and landing, so that would be the prime candidate. I cannot for the life of me, and Chris is looking at me like he doesn't know either. I don't remember the booster number, so I'm sorry I don't have that in front of me, but there's too many boosters to keep track of these days, but I know there is one that is being prepared for its 7th flight that should be relatively soon. I remember it recently launched another Starlink mission. I'm sure someone in chat knows, but I don't have that number in front of me. Sorry.
Yeah, I think looking at I think B1049 was the one that has flown 6 times, so that would probably be the most likely. And then Dougal asks, of course I still love you, the drone ship that was out at the last attempt?
I believe it was, yes. Of course, I Still Love You was here for the first attempt. We know they had some. Actually, no, I take that back. So the first attempt for this mission was scrubbed due to a recovery issue that SpaceX, they just tweeted recovery issue. We don't have a more detail on that. I believe Just Read the Instructions was downrange for that mission. This was a while ago. And by a while, I mean like a week or something. But yeah, which, in space terms isn't really that long of a time now that we think about it. But I believe the first attempt was actually Just Read the Instructions, and they actually brought that back to port. I don't know if the recovery issue meant that there was actually something wrong with the drone ship, or it could have been something completely different. We don't know.
So likely not, because the drone ships in the recovery fleet stayed out there after that first attempt, and then the next day when they were not able to go again because of the hurricane and actual, that's when they then came back when they stood down from the next day. So probably not the drone ship, just because they didn't come back immediately. They remained out there for another attempt, and when that attempt was delayed multiple days and they knew they were sliding toward range unavailability, that's when Just Read the Instructions came back, and they did all the swapping around to get them both back out there to the same general location for Starlink and GPS.
Actually, yeah, you do mention that there are actually 2 recovery zones that are pretty much right next to one another. Because, like we mentioned, there is a GPS satellite launch planned for tomorrow evening, and both of those missions have drone ship recoveries. So for this particular mission, of course, I Still Love You is stationed downrange. However, the upcoming GPS satellite will feature a first stage landing on Just Read the Instructions, I believe just slightly northeast or northwest, sorry, of the Starlink landing zone. So there are 2 drone ships, both stationed relatively close to one another downrange right now. Both drone ships out on mission, but of course, I Still Love You will be stationed for this one.
Okay, a couple more super chats. Kelsey, thank you for the membership. And then Starman Steve says, thanks for your great work, NASA spaceflight. I watch Mary's work every morning. and all the Space Coast live feeds. Awesome, thanks. We really appreciate your support, Starman Steve. And then again, if you have more questions, keep tagging at NASA Spaceflight in chat. We'll keep rolling through them as we're at about T-minus 20 minutes now. So we should start to see that large event from Falcon 9. But Martin Smith asks, how many satellites are due to be launched in total? I'm guessing they mean in the Starlink constellation.
Yeah, that's a great question and a number that's still slightly up in the air because I believe what they've got in Thomas, you correct me, there's the T-minus 20-minute vent. There's no wind again today, so you're not going to see things blowing around. We're right by the flagpole here, and the flag is not moving. So unfortunately, that vent is coming right at us. So not the best viewing angle, but there is our big T-minus 20-minute event. Back to your question, that's a little nebulous and up in the air right now. So we know that SpaceX is that the permits filed with the FCC allow for, and Thomas, correct me if I'm wrong here, up to 42,000 Starlinks. But no one has actually confirmed if that's the number they actually intend to be like the high end operational limit of it, or if they just got permission to launch more than they think they'll need, and they can adjust, or they can launch other ones to replace aging portions of the constellation without having to need reauthorization to launch more. So, and the total number in the first operational constellation has also changed a lot. So we don't know, but the answer is up to 42,000. So, yes.
I believe the number for this initial phase of the constellation, which this launch is contributing to, is 1,500. The number 1,584 is in my head.
And it's in my head too, because I think that might have been the original constellation, but then the altitude, but that's when there were different shells and there are more shells. But 52, 30 something, 40 something is about right for the initial rollout to have like the complete initial global coverage for everyone, which we're about halfway there. This will bring the total number launched to 775 or something like that, or 755 or something like that. So you can see we're about halfway there, which makes sense considering we're about at 45 degrees latitude coming down from the poles, and halfway between 90 and 0 is 45. So you can see they're about there. So yeah, 1,500 probably works for initial global offerings. And by that, we really mean Southern Canada and the United States and Australia, which are the ones where the permits have actually been applied for right now to actually use them.
And we just got a report that it's currently raining in Titusville, so the rain might be headed towards the launch pad. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But I'm bringing up the radar on my computer right now. I'm going to take a look and see what the situation is.
It's so Southern Canada and the United States and Australia. How they're offering services and to who, because one of the bizarre things about the OneWeb rescue announcement earlier this year when the UK government bought a huge portion of the interest in that company was they automatically said in the release of, look at this big new thing we're doing, but we're not letting you use it, and we're not letting you use it, and we're not letting you use it. And it's like, okay, so who does get to use it? And I don't think they've really answered that question since the takeover. It's been very, very quiet. So it's an excellent question, but there just really isn't a firm answer for it just yet. Oh, a breeze! My God. Sorry, that makes like all the like what it feels like temperature difference, just a little tiny breeze. But yeah, that's where we are right now with OneWeb.
And then any info on if people can still see these satellites as they move to their final orbits? I guess because SpaceX, if everyone remembers, has started introducing some different methods of orientating the satellites while they're orbit raising to reduce their reflections. Do we know if they can still be seen?
They can still be seen, yes. The purpose of that new technology, the Shield, primarily, which is the newest version, is once again primarily for those operational orbits. Once they can orient them properly when they're up at their 550 kilometer operational altitudes. So yeah, they're still very visible. And what is it, Celestrac or something like that sends out the two line elements, the TLEs, which are the predicted orbital parameters, which is how we know this one in particular is going into an initial deployment orbit of 280 by 290 kilometers, with a release of all the satellites about 61 minutes after liftoff. And again, the altitude that they go into, the timing of their release is all predicated on what plane they're trying to go into and how many satellites they're trying to drift into adjacent planes.
And that deployment time, 61 minutes after liftoff, is much later than most of the standard 60 Starlink internet satellite launches. We know they've had some rideshare missions where the payload was slightly different. They took off a couple Starlinks to replace with customer payloads. So those flight profiles were a little different and had some longer kind of coasts until a final burn and then payload deploy. But this one is a standard, all just 60 Starlink satellites, and it's doing a different flight profile. Do we have any reason to speculate as to why they might have changed that?
Yeah. So I think it comes down to ultimately, right, the phasing requirements that you want to do with the particular plane that you're launching into. Orbital mechanics, how to describe this. It's not necessarily just about getting into the correct plane, but being at the correct place in the correct plane when you start certain sequences.
And I'm looking for more questions.
And it's raining.
Pretty good. LWO1 WeatherNet. LWO1 WeatherNet. Liftoff conditions looking pretty good.
STS is ready for launch. Ignition. Liftoff.
Falcon 9 has cleared the tower.
Ten, 9, 8,
Side booster ignition.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good morning. It's Monday, September Kennedy Space Center. Hello from SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. My name is Alex Siegel, and I'm a senior material planner here at SpaceX. You're watching a live webcast for our 13th Starlink mission and our 17th mission this year. To date, we've launched more than 700 Starlink satellites to orbit. As a reminder, Starlink is a constellation of satellites that can provide high-speed, low-latency internet all over the globe, particularly in our remote and rural areas where connectivity is limited or completely unavailable. Today's mission will be a bit longer than our recent Starlink missions. We will be lighting our second stage twice and deploying the stack of 60 satellites at about an hour into the mission. By deploying our satellites after 2 second stage burns to a circular orbit, it helps to get them to their final orbit much faster. We are at T-minus 8 minutes and 17 seconds. All systems are go for an on-time liftoff this morning. Now, but we are currently no-go for weather, which is a watch item. On your screen is a live view of Falcon 9, our two-stage liquid-fueled launch vehicle standing 229 feet tall, or slightly taller than a 21-story building. Today, this booster will be flying for the third time. It made its debut on our Commercial Crew Demo 2 mission at the end of May, which sent Bob and Doug safely on their journey to the International Space Station, and it flew again in July for the Anasis 2 mission. The bottom two-thirds of the vehicle is the first stage. You can see the soot markings left over from its previous flight. The first stage accelerates the vehicle through the Earth's atmosphere into space with the help of 9 Merlin engines at the base of the rocket. Today, we will be attempting to recover our first stage for the third time on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. Now, above the first stage is the second stage, which has a single Merlin vacuum or MVAC engine, which ignites after the first stage separates. The second stage is what will carry the Starlink satellites into a circular orbit above the Earth's surface. Falcon 9 has been loading propellant since T-minus 35 minutes. As a reminder, we use a rocket-grade kerosene, or RP1, as our fuel, and super-chilled liquid oxygen, or LOX, as our oxidizer to power the Falcon 9. Currently, RP1 and LOX are nearly fully loaded on both stages, and LOX will continue to be topped off right until the last minute of the countdown. The stack of 60 satellites is safely enclosed inside of the 17-foot diameter payload fairing, which is the pointed cone on the very top of the rocket. This protects the satellites from aerothermal heating, aerodynamic loads, and contamination during ascent. Once we reach the vacuum of space, we will jettison the fairing as the second stage continues on its journey to orbit. One of the fairing halves today is brand new, and the other supported 2 previous Starlink launches, one in May 2019 and the other in March of this year. We will be attempting to recover them today using our recovery ships Miss Tree and Miss Chief. At about 2 minutes before the fairing halves are expected to land, the team will conduct a go, no-go poll for the catch. The weather is an important factor in the decision as it impacts the sea states for the recovery boats as well as how the fairings fall back to Earth. Now, as a reminder that I mentioned earlier, weather currently is a no-go. We have some thick clouds in the skies above our launch pad, and we're worried about how that might impact Falcon 9 as its ascent. So with that, the vehicle, satellites, and range are all looking good for an on-time launch, minus the weather that's going to be a watch item right up to the last minute. Now, as many of you watching may know, SpaceX was founded under the belief that a future where humanity is out exploring the stars is fundamentally more exciting than one where we are not. From rocket reusability to developing interplanetary transportation systems, our teams get to work on programs with the potential to impact both our lives on Earth and beyond the stars. And Starlink is no exception. As I mentioned earlier, today's mission marks our 13th Starlink mission. By design, these satellites will be able to service areas where internet connectivity has been unreliable, too expensive, or completely unavailable. This kind of network has never been done before, and our team continues to grow as we get closer to this goal. Specifically, the Starlink team in Redmond is looking for great engineers to join our Network Operations Center. Our NOC engineers are constantly monitoring Starlink to ensure that SpaceX's orbital and ground assets are delivering the best possible user experience. We're also looking for full-stack software engineers and simple user interfaces are critical to our success. As a software has a huge impact on the quality of our service. If you're interested, send your resume to softwarejobs@spacex.com or check out the careers page on our website. We are currently at T-minus 4 minutes and 14 seconds from liftoff, and Falcon 9 is now moving into the final stages of the countdown. The first and second stages are both nearly fully loaded with 1 million pounds of kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen. Super chilled liquid oxygen, which as I mentioned earlier is our propellant oxidizer, is what's creating those white clouds you see around Falcon 9 when it's exposed to the warmer ambient air. First stage should finish prop loading at T-minus 3 minutes, and second stage will be a minute behind that at T-minus 2 minutes. At T-minus 60 seconds, Falcon 9 is in startup. This means that the rocket's autonomous internal flight computers have taken over the launch countdown. The Starlink payload continues to be healthy. The F9 team is tracking no issues on the rocket. Weather, again, still questionable and no go, but the range is green for launch.
That's better. You can hear me a little bit. Fingers crossed, guys.
You can notice on your screen above Falcon 9 that we are looking at some pretty cloudy skies, and so we are still no-go, but hoping we get a little clearance right at our launch window so we can thread the needle, as they say. We're just under a minute away from LOX loading completion, and then 30 seconds after that, we would expect to see that white cloud that common viewers are used to seeing of the transporter erector LOX line.
2:30. Come on, girl. Please, just go up, girl. Please.
20 seconds from now, we should complete LOX loading.
T-minus 2 minutes.
Now at T-minus 2 minutes, LOX loading is complete on the vehicle.
3, 2, 1, 0. Big vent. It's a big vent. That's a big vent. There it is. 2 minutes, 1,000.
You can see the prominent white cloud venting from the transporter erector LOX line. Again, this is normal.
Okay, whenever rocket launch, people might get shoot.
We are 20 seconds from entering startup. Again, as a reminder, and for folks just turning in, we are still no-go on weather for this launch. We're going to keep counting down until the last possible moment, and if the weather is not clear, we will call it. So sit tight. Hopefully we can make this one happen today. First stage and second stage are pressurizing for launch.
Hold. This is a Starlink L12 scrub due to weather violations.
And we just heard the hold on the nets. Unfortunately, it looks like due to weather violations, we're going to have to scrub today. But again, the most important thing is reducing as much risk on the mission as possible, and with that comes waiting for a window of good weather. Thanks again, folks, for tuning in. We currently don't have a backup launch schedule yet. We do have the GPS launch schedule for tomorrow, but as soon as we know that information, we'll share it on our socials, so please keep checking for the next Starlink launch opportunity. Thanks again, and everyone have a great day. And for folks just turning in, we are And if it's, unfortunately, it looks like, and we just.
This is Starlink L12. Hold, hold, hold. This is Starlink L12 scrub due to weather violations.
And we just heard the hold.
Eastern time. That is 0402 UTC. That is the opening of the window, and that mission will hopefully get some better weather luck than Falcon 9 did this morning and go tonight. Of course, we will have live coverage of that mission here on NASA Spaceflight, but this Starlink mission will not be going off on this attempt.
But of course, too. Oh, sorry. Yeah, but of course, too. It's worth noting that Falcon 9 originally moved. This mission originally moved to October 1st, when it looked like the Delta was going to interfere. So October 1st would be my educated guess as to when they'll initially try, but maybe if they can get the range for the 30th, if these two missions tomorrow go as anticipated.
Oh, well then, guys. Enjoy your day. I might see tomorrow early morning. Uh, 11 hours. 12. 14 hours. Thirteen. Anyway, guys.
I think we're good. Okay, we're good.
And I'll see you all tomorrow. Okay, then. I ran the stream. There's a leave a window. Have a good day, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye.